Hello Year 2, it's Miss Begum here with this week's writing task. I hope you're all well and enjoyed researching and writing about the Sphinx last week. This week, you're going to write another story. Now, I just want you to remember that you can do part of the task today and then maybe plan and write tomorrow, okay? You don't have to do all of it in the same day because sometimes it's nice to have fresh eyes on something. So, this week, you've been asked to write your own version or retell the Willow pattern story, which is a traditional story set in China. Now, if you haven't yet listened to it, I suggest you go and watch that video first. It's really short and it's really simple. The link is in the description box for this video, or you can find it on your learning menu, okay? Once you've listened to the story, you're ready to go. It's really simple, so it gives us a chance to really add some detail to our retelling. You've also been asked this week to use expanded noun phrases when describing places and characters in your story. So I thought let's recap what an expanded noun phrase is. So an expanded noun phrase is when we describe and add more detail to a noun. Now in Year 2, this is by adding an adjective before the noun. So let's have a look at an example. I've got a king, which is noun, and the king becomes a noun phrase. Now to make an expanded noun phrase, I need to add an adjective. So I've got the powerful king. That's my expanded noun phrase. As you can see, powerful is the adjective and it comes before the noun, which is king. I've also got the powerful, controlling king, which is another expanded noun phrase. Now this time I've got two adjectives before my noun, okay? And I've put a comma to separate the two. Now we can use two adjectives on a noun and we can use an adjective on a noun on its own. We just need to remember that when we're using them, we have the desired impact from the expanded noun phrase, because sometimes using two is really good, but sometimes one is just fine. Before we start planning our story, I thought it'd be a good idea for us to practice writing some noun phrases or expanded noun phrases. This way, if you write some that are really exciting, you can even keep note of them and use them for your own writing, and you're not having to think about them again. So here we go. So can you write your own expanded noun phrases for characters and places in the story? So we've met some characters already in this story. So I've got a picture of an emperor. So I thought I'd find some pictures so you can give you a better idea of how the characters and places would look. So look at his beard, look at his expression on his face, look at the clothes he's wearing. We've got a princess. Now remember, it's a traditional Chinese story, so she doesn't really look like the princesses we might see in Europe. So look at her headdress, look at the dress, look at the sleeves on that dress. We've got a warrior, again, a traditional Chinese warrior. Look at his armor. Look at the sword. Again, he's also got quite a few frilly bits on there, which you wouldn't usually see. We've got a worker. That would be our Chang in the story. He's wearing a hat. That's because, again, it's in China and it's very hot. Working on the fields. Now, palace. Now, this palace is not going to look like Buckingham Palace because, again, remember where it is set. It's in China. Look at that palace there. Look at the roof, look at the way that we've got the points on each corner. Nice. And then the island as well. Again, it's a very green island, and because it's in Asia, and we know if you research it, you can see a lot of the pictures from that place. You think about the climate, it's very hot. So yeah, you can pause the video here and write some expanded noun phrases, maybe two for each, and that way you've got a nice bank that you can refer to when you're writing your story. Okay, so let's start planning. As we're writing a story, we need to think about the purpose. So the purpose is to entertain. Now, how do we want our reader to feel? So how do you want the reader to feel? You want to entertain them. So we know we want to keep them interested and want them to feel quite excited to read the story. We want them to imagine they're in the palace or on the island with Kung Se and Chan. Also, I think it's important in a story to feel Like, you understand the characters. We want them to feel happy for the princess at the very end, don't we? Now, how are we going to achieve this? What are we going to include? What grammar, punctuation, spellings can we remember to include in our writing to help us make the reader feel excited and interested and imagine that they're there? So first, to make sure they're interested and excited, different sentence openers, because we don't just want to start with then, but rather we want to express when something is happening, how something is happening. You know, is it suddenly? Is it the next day? Is it in the night? Also, we've got conjunctions, again, to join ideas, to add more information to a sentence. You did some of these last week with Mrs. Hines, and I know that you went through loads of examples. And then to imagine that they're in the palace, we can use our expanded noun phrases. And not just for that, but to describe the characters as well. And then the last one, to make our readers understand how our characters are feeling, I've put to describe emotions that are felt by the characters. And I don't just mean saying the princess was sad or the princess was happy, but more using adverbs and verbs to describe it. So if you think back to when we read Kensuke's Kingdom or when we read The Great Fire Dogs, we felt anxious when George was looking for the dogs, and we felt quite sad for Michael or worried for Michael when he was swimming and he was struggling in the sea. So we want to be able to understand by using adverbs and verbs. For example, flew away happily. Rather than just saying they were happy and they flew away, we can use an adverb, which is happily. Or we can say jumped with excitement, because that's a verb. They're doing something because they're so excited, rather than just saying they were happy and they jumped. Well, they were excited. We can say something that they're doing. So have a think about verbs and adverbs as well. Now, to plan the story for the 5 different parts, there we go. So firstly, we've got the opening, and we have our main character and our setting. So we introduce our main character. So I've put Kungse, and I've put a few words, a few adjectives to describe her. So I've put beautiful. What makes her that? It's because she's caring, she's smart. What might she look like? So I've put long black hair. I've put silk, flowy gown. You can add more using the expanded noun phrases you used before. I'm not going to put loads down because I really want you to have a go at writing some of your own. Then I've put the palace in China because that's our setting, that's where it starts. I've put vast green gardens. I've put golden sculptures. You might want to add more and add loads of detail to this. Next, I've got my build-up. Now, this is where something actually happens. So I've put, Kungse's father, the emperor, arranged her marriage to chief warrior. That's not a sentence. It's me writing notes. Okay? You're going to change this into a sentence, and you're going to include some of her feelings and maybe answer, why does he want her to marry the chief warrior? Why does he want to marry him? But Kungse wanted to marry Chang, but he was poor. I've put a conjunction but there. Maybe you can use that or use something else. So how do you think she was feeling? I've put the word describe because I want you to describe how she was feeling. I want you to describe maybe Chang and who he actually was. Why didn't her dad want her to marry him? One sentence, guys. One sentence to describe. Next, we move on to our problem. Now, this is the main part of the story where lots of things happen, where we want to add the most detail. So here, the problem is that, well, in the build-up, we know she needs to marry the chief emperor that she doesn't want, warrior that she doesn't want to marry. So in the problem, Kungse and Chang fled to a secluded island. Can you describe when they fled? How might we start that sentence? Can you add a note on when it might be? Is it on the day of the wedding? Is it the night before the wedding? Did they creep away? Did they have a plan? How did they get away from the guards? How did nobody spot them? How were they feeling? Were they excited to go? Were they quite anxious? Have a think about those and write them down. We know that they lived happily once they were on the island. However, one day, the emperor's spy found them. You might want to change this a little bit. You might decide that the warrior actually went and found them. You can change it up. It's okay, it's your version. And then I've put wanted to take them as prisoners, which they did. So again, you can describe the feelings that they were feeling, what the emotion that they were going through, what were they doing? Did they try to hide? Did they try to run away? Just try to put some, remember, this is the bit with the most detail, so it's your chance to just describe. You've got the ideas now, it's just you building on the story. Then the resolution is where we have to solve the problem. Now here, because their love was so strong, they actually transformed into doves and they flew away. It's a really simple resolution there. So I've put, describe how they transformed. Can you add a bit of detail to what happened to their hands? Did their fingers suddenly turn to feathers? Did they feel a tingle? I don't know. Did a shining bright light appear before they transformed? I don't know. It's up to you. You can describe this. Make it as exciting for the reader as possible. And then finally, the ending is what happens after the problem is solved. Now, I am banning the line, they lived happily ever after, because I think we can choose a better one, or we can find a better one. We can come up with something better. Yes, they did live happily ever after, but how? Where did they go? So I've just put Kung Se and Chang were together as doves forever. That doesn't mean you're going to write that as your sentence. I would like you to think of your own way of trying to say they stayed together forever. Did they fly into the sky? I don't know. Did they live in a really tall tree? Did they move back to live in the palace gardens? I don't know. You can decide and tell us how they lived happily ever after without writing the words happily ever after. That's a special challenge for you. So there's the plan. Use it. Add your own adjectives and expanded noun phrases, your conjunctions, your sentence openers. And finally, what do we need to remember to write a successful piece of writing? Okay, so firstly, we need to make sure we're using our capital letters and our full stops correctly. So at the beginning of a sentence, we need a capital letter and we need a full stop at the end of our sentence. And we also need our capital letters for our character names and names of places. Second, I would like you to make sure you're using different conjunctions. So I've put but, so, and, if, because, and when. Of course, feel free to use any more if you know them and if you can use them correctly. Mrs. Hines did this with you last week. So I know that you've already practiced using different conjunctions in your stories from your Sphinx stories, which you did brilliantly at. And then this week's challenge, this week's focus is to use expanded noun phrases to describe. Remember what I said about using an expanded noun phrase that has one adjective and an expanded noun phrase that has two adjectives. Think through it, read through it, and decide which sounds better, which is better for the reader. And for you to do that, you need to just remember to read through your work and edit it as you go along. So go back, read, check, change if you need to, and carry on. Once you've finished your story and you're happy, email it in to newbie.sch.uk. Mrs. Hines and I really look forward to reading them all. Enjoy!